Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ellen. So today we're going to paint a loose spring floral in watercolor, and I'm going to show you one of my favorite techniques, which is lifting the paint. These lovely daisies are created by lifting the watercolor. It's kind of like mopping it up. This technique is also great for any kind of tutorial. If you're doing a landscape, a seascape, an urban sketching one, sometimes you need a highlight, you need to know how to lift the paint off the paper. And even it's great if you actually splattered your paint on your paper and you need to lift off the paint on the paper. It's really great. If you have any questions, please leave in the comment section. Let me know if this is a technique that you love. If you're just starting out watercolor, really this is one of the best techniques. I love this technique. Also, if you're a Patreon member, you get the additional tutorial right here. Same technique, but a little bit more. We're adding a little bit something else in here. So if you want to be a Patreon member, just click the link in the description box, and it'll lead you to Patreon, and you can learn more about it there. And it's where people support my channel here, my free content here on YouTube, which I really appreciate. And Patreon members have access, once you join, to thousands of videos, exclusive tutorials, all kinds of stuff there. So go check it out. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so I'm going to play with some Fabriano cold pressed paper in the bright white block. This is 7x9 by Fabriano. Bunch of brushes. I'll go over them as I use them. But this is an exercise in just playing with loose watercolor and painting watercolor upon watercolor. You know, you put a wash down first, and then you go over it and add more color. So I'm just going to grab my blue. This is ultramarine blue. I have my number 16 Neptune series brush. A little bit of bright rose from Holbein, making like a nice bluish purple here. And I'll be playing, just putting that color in right now, just tapping it on the paper. I'm not going to fill the whole paper, just like this. Could add a little more blue. But we really want just like a nice light color. I'm going to just plop down first. And we're going to have to wait till this dries before we put other colors on top of it, because it will just become a muddy mess. While we're waiting for it to dry, we can play with adding in some blooms that are in these color tones that would kind of dissipate, you know, as they dry. So here's a lovely color that we have. I'm just going to remove some of this really wet color. So again, same colors again, mixing them, and they can be a variety of tones between the blue and the pink. Pink, add more pinker, blue, you know how it goes. So think about blooms where you would want them to go. If they're going to bend, they're going to twist. Maybe I'll just tap some color here. See, just using the big brush, tapping, tippy tap, the line, simple. And that's going to a little bit more. Maybe add more pink color tones. You can actually just make it more of a shape instead of just big circles. I'm going to tap a little bit of the color here. See, I'm going in here and adding in more of the color. And it will kind of like separate, especially if it's really loose. So I'm adding more of the pink. Getting it very wet, almost tea consistency, water. This is very wet and wet. So this is a block, by the way. It's not just a sheet of paper. If you don't have a block, you really might want to stretch your paper or really tape it down. So now I'm adding these nice pink color tones. Look how sweet that looks already. And you're just playing here. You're just tapping and moving things around. Okay, just that'll be it for tapping the color. Although if I wanted to put some thick color, so here, thick, really kind of thick, not moving much with the paint. You can kind of tap the thick color, just little teeny taps. Look at that. On top of the ones you just did. It will just add a variety. So, picture like these are hyacinth, or they could be lilacs. You know, just kind of an abstract, kind of loose, almost like lilac. I think they look more like lilacs. And I'm just tapping in the triangle kind of shape, bending a little bit. And tapping some down here. Thick paint at this point. And that will still kind of spread out a little bit more too. Another thing we can play with while it's still very damp and wet is lifting. Now, if you're not familiar with lifting, it's kind of like mopping with a watercolor brush. I always suggest lifting with a kind of stiffer brush. This is a very loose, floppy brush from Princeton. This is the Neptune series, very loose and floppy, which I love. Look how pretty that looks already. It can be like wisteria if it was upside down. You have to flip this around. It looks like wisteria, right? Either or. So I would grab a stiffer brush. The Velvet Touch series is stiffer and great. You clean up your brush with some water. Have a paper towel close by. And you're kind of lifting and tapping back on the paper towel. You see I'm removing. You might have to clean up your brush again with clear water. Look at that. I don't suggest using a paper towel because this has a lot of nuance to it when you're lifting. Some of the paint folds back into the grooves of this cold press. And you want that. See, now it has this atmospheric kind of look to it. I'm just tapping around some of the blooms. And down in here. Now see how the paint kind of just this cauliflower situation that's happening in here because we were bleeding the paint on paint. It can happen. And if you didn't want the cauliflower situation, you can kind of play with kind of manipulating it a little bit by adding in some color. So kind of mush the lines a little bit. I don't really mind it, but don't you just love, see how I'm removing the paint? Oop, I had blue on there. Blue pigment, where did that come from? I must have tipped my brush into something. But again, it's just, you want to make little daisies, stiff brush, stiff, stiff, and you're just going around like this. It's so much fun to do. And it's a good practice for lifting when you're doing other things. So if you want to make nice little daisies, which I'm doing here, you might want to lift the center too, because if you're going to add yellow, depending how big your daisies are, this is something where you put the music on, you're just kind of lifting, twisting, getting that. You don't want it to be like this perfect circle either. I'm lifting. It's best to do this when the paper is damp. When it's dry, it's going to be much harder. You would need almost like a scrubber brush to get it up. You really want to do it when it's in this phase. Lifting is fantastic. It's a totally great technique if you're starting out in watercolor. So here we have that background color. Just lifting some more. Maybe I'll do one down here too. I'm trying to keep them like more of like not center focused, maybe like they're on the side. Isn't that cute? You can lift leaves and then go in and put the leaves in. So leaf shape. Even skinnier lines will require just a little bit more time, but really cool. See how I just did that one, skinny line? Same thing with this one. Isn't it pretty? Just this way alone right now is just really pretty. I'm just lifting. So if I wanted to have a bright green, you know, the green and the purple won't be bright, but it will be where the white part is. See, that's the trick. Just lifting away. It's just a really great technique you should really practice in watercolor, especially if you're doing highlights on buildings or landscapes. Lifting. And if you're really not great at lifting, you'd have to really plan ahead and do some masking fluid. So I like lifting because it's kind of spontaneous. So at this point, I might just let it dry. I'll do a few more like lines actually. I really liked how that turned out. So I'm going to lift skinny line up in here. Kind of going downward. Yeah, that was kind of cool, right? Very spontaneous kind of leaves. And maybe another one poking up here. Right over this bloom. Just the tip of your brush going down. That's really cool. So at this point, I'm going to let it dry. I'm not going to play around with it too much. If you did, like I said, if you did want to make a thicker leaf, I'll do one more actually. I know I'm going a little crazy. So I want to make a bright leaf in here. So I'm going to just put that in there. Remember, stiffer brush. All right, we'll let this dry. And it just as is right now. We're only 6 minutes in, and it's beautiful, right? I love it. You can play around with even just having the little white dots by lifting these little blooms. See? Just tippy tap back here. I really, really think it's so pretty. It adds so much. All right, I'm going to let it dry and come back. All right, now that it's dry, we can go back in and we can add in some yellow to the daisies. Now, you can keep them white with a little bit yellow in the center. I'm just going to add a little yellow here. Or you can make the daisies yellow themselves, right? See if I just had the little white center, I mean yellow center. I might add some shadowing too to that. Just really kind of simple. I've used cadmium yellow deep, and I've just added a teeny bit of burnt sienna just to give a little, just diffuse it a little bit. I want this bright, intense yellow. Look how pretty that looks, right? And we'll use that same yellow. We'll grab some Prussian blue here, and we'll get some green. Now I'm going to keep it on the bright side and see how it's going to look in the purple. I'm going to play around with that. Just going to use my number 10. Just going to move my brush down. These simple strokes. Right over that green that I had, the lifting that I had done. Right? Nice and bright. And we can start to play with adding in the color here. And I'm just making simple leaves. Just kind of pushing down here. You kind of push down, up, over, and down. Like that. Nice bright green. See how it came out nice and bright with the lifting of the color? So if I wanted to go back over these lovely little areas that we lifted, it will show a nice chartreusey green. It would not show that had we not lifted the paint. Look how great that is. And we're going to have some depth with some deeper color. Right? So then we add some more Prussian blue to our green. It's getting darker. And I always add a brown, or you can add some red. I add some burnt umber, and it's just going to tone that green from being a blue green to being a more evergreen type of green. So you can add some green stems. Just take your brush, kind of move like this. Work around your daisies. Add some darker color leaves. And we're going to fix the purple blooms too. Just going to play with some leaves at this point. Just kind of moving around your paper here. You don't want too much. You don't want too much going on, right? And I'll have some darker leaves coming up this way. A lot of fun. And you can take the darker leaf green and kind of put it in your lighter one. See how I'm going to put that in there? Just on the right side and kind of blending it. It gives us more depth and dimension. And I can get the lighter green in there again too. I'm playing around with that. A little bit darker here, because it'd be kind of peeking behind it. You don't have to get so serious with this though. Just really simple leaves. Call it a day. I might add a few up here. Little stems coming off them. Get, like it's really kind of a wild. They're in the wild. The daisies. Just tippy tap some little leaves on them. Just fun, fun, fun. Thicker paint will help stay on top of that purple a little better. You can kind of come out of that little area that I did here, the vignette. And I'll make this a little bit darker. Very interesting, right? For the purple, you want to get detailed, go back in and make real actual, maybe a few of the actual blooms. So I'll take the same brush, making the purple color with the pink. Zoom in, see what I'm talking about. So you can kind of just do some simple 4 or 5 petal flowers. See, on top of the ones we just did. Don't do them everywhere, and we'll get too much. Just do a little circle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Seems to be a nice number. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Just for added detail. And then you can just put some nice, like maybe even just a brighter pink instead of all the purple. Little tippy taps of color on this. Make little blooms that are just delicate. Just simple little taps. Create like a nice little bloom right there. So isn't this great? And if you want to really kind of, you can add a little color to define the daisy a little more. It's kind of atmospheric now. I'm going to go in between some of the petals. You see that? And it looks more defined. It's up to you. I kind of love the atmospheric look on some of these. And even if the petal got, on the leaf, I'm sorry, got a little too dark, you can kind of lift that too. The line right in here, because we learned how to lift that center line of the leaf. All these things you got to play with. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to mix up some darker color again and just get the dimension behind this leaf right here. I'm putting some lines in some of the, you really just play with it. But the whole initial part of it is just tapping in the color, bleeding it, lifting color, all that good stuff to create such a unique floral. Have fun with it. Don't get yourself frustrated. It's not supposed to be perfect. These are just techniques. I'm going to lift that petal, leaf, I'm sorry, leaf, I keep saying petal. Just a line, the vein kind of in between the leaf right there. A lot of fun. The lifting technique is my favorite technique to create really beautiful spring blooms. If you have any questions, leave in the comment section. Let me know how you do in lifting. Do you like it? Really experiment with it, right? And if you want to get really technical with the daisy, add a little, like maybe some brown. I'm adding some brown to my yellow and blue, and you can just kind of add a little bit of that on the bottom here. And it just gives it a little bit of dimension, but not necessary. And I might loosen that up a little bit with some water. I'm sorry. Just so it looks a little more semi-realistic. There, kind of blending that. Voila! I hope this was fun. I hope you learned something. You just, the background color, bleeding it, adding color. So it's like the background going up to the foreground, right? And the light, those whites come shining right through. If you made your lovely little kind of like lilacs lighter, you can go back in and just put a little dot of dark purple in the little center of those little flower petals. I'm using ultramarine blue. See, all the little details matter sometimes. So, thank you for coming by my channel. If you enjoyed what you see, maybe you'll have to consider joining my Patreon, where I have more extensive and exclusive tutorials, and it's a place people support my free content here on YouTube. Patreon members are going to get an additional video from this, more practice. So like I said, it's just a place people support my channel, which I really appreciate, and you can join and cancel anytime, and there's thousands of videos from all the years I've been painting online, so go check it out. The link is in the description box. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. I hope you have a fantastic day. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.